guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host and most, Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the lefts, we go up to the rights, we go up to the middle of independence, we go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything, and you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion, and that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on, it's gonna be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, February 12th, 2022, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host and most, Will Buchanan. On How the Frack We Got Here, we do take the events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. Before I do get started, guys, I do have to let you know that we do try to be a family-friendly podcast. At least most of the time we try to be. So sometimes words may fly. Also, there may be things that might be shown that might be just a little too intense for younger viewers, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So, it's the weekend, and of course, it wouldn't be anything without a few stories from the crazy people, especially, as we talk about the January 6th, they want to call it riots. Most people want to call it insurrections. I call it what it should be called. Terrorists that decide to try to stop an electoral process and try to call it freedom. Yes, terrorists and a failed coup d'etat. Even more so that when we go back and look at this a year ago, now coming on 2 years ago now, that what's interesting is that sitting down with one of these people and how their mind works just tells a lot about how we still have a way to go. Because honestly, it's amazing in this clip I'm about to say that this person here, literally and figuratively, knows it's a cult, knows Trump's a cult, but won't acknowledge his own actions. So there's one thing I can't say about Trump people. They definitely have learned from their cult leader lack of accountability.
January 6th, 2021 was the greatest day of my life.
Why?
I felt like a patriot that was standing beside our founding fathers, speaking up against King George. I felt like Braveheart.
We first met Keith Scott at a small rally on the anniversary of January 6th. He told us he'd spent months after the 2020 election living in his car and going to every Stop the Steal rally. Now he's carrying a huge flag calling the movement a cult. But leading a cult, whether real or metaphorical, is messy.
Something was posted saying that there was a rally, like I was not in control. I was going no matter what. How did I get caught up in this? I'd never been to a Trump rally. I wasn't one of those people.
The whole crew for this interview was also at Jan 6. So we had the same question. How did so many people get to a place where they were willing to commit crimes to stop a democratic election, all while calling themselves patriots?
They maced me. They pushed me out and they maced me.
So we spent 4 hours listening to every detail of Keith's political journey.
At the time I lived in Georgia, I get there on election day and there were only a couple of cars in the parking lot. The record turnout that they say that there was in Fulton County, Georgia, which is the county that I voted in, it didn't happen.
Wasn't there a significant amount of early voting, though?
In that demographic, it's a poor area, it's predominantly Black area. You'll never be able to convince me that they were sitting around watching CNN and Fox News and all these things, and that's what they were most concerned about, was the election and getting a ballot and mailing it in. If you were to ask people, is Joe Biden going to get more of the Black vote than Barack Obama? People would say no. And Biden supposedly did. It doesn't make any sense.
Right, but the bigger picture here is actually one I'm really interested in, because it is a recurring theme, which is that you have skepticism about the Black vote in this election. Part of it seems to me, you said you lived and voted in a Black area, and how could those people have the time to pay attention to the election? And why do you think you would be able to pay attention to that and Black people wouldn't?
I don't think that everyone is interested in politics like I am. It's not necessarily about racial lines.
Trump himself has repeated this same trope. It's a quip, not a fact. In 2008, an estimated 95% of Black voters voted for Obama. In 2020, 92% voted for Biden. But lies like this one were repeated until they seemed like cold hard truth, as Keith drove from protest to protest and Stop the Steal grew.
I'm not like trying to say like you're a bad person or like you would use a racial slur. What I'm just trying to get at is that you might not be sensitive to the big picture about what it looks like disputing votes only in places where most of the voters are people of color, and that people of color might take some offense to that.
That's not what Stop the Steal was about. And
Stop the Steal is about those votes don't count. Somebody's votes don't count, not your vote, but someone else's.
I'm not going to be painted into this narrative that you're trying to go down this rabbit hole. I'm kind of done with the racial part of this.
This is the party of Trump.
I got introduced to all these other people that I had never heard of that week in Georgia.
We the people.
I remember Nick Fuentes being there, Alex Jones being there, Ali Alexander, the founder of Stop the Steal. I actually met the leader of the Proud Boys, Enrique Torrio. He was just really nice. He's not a really big guy. He's a little bigger than me.
The reason it's interesting is that like these small groups who've always been on the fringe see a mass movement and they
Yes, 100%.
And the crowd is going wild.
The movement was growing.
There's mountains of evidence. This election was a fraud on America.
Sidney Powell is going to come up. Everybody felt like she is the one that is going to unveil all the evidence of election fraud. But the people that were giving evidence of election frauds, it was the same message that we had heard a day before or weeks before, but it was like, it's coming. It's going to be revealed. Like just keeping us holding on for the next breath.
All that energy was released on Jan 6. Keith saw what we saw, but he didn't take the same lesson.
I felt like a proud patriot on that day. And I know that's not popular to say, but that's what I felt like. Then just some crazy fight scenes started happening.
Did you think, are we the bad guys?
I thought this doesn't end well.
What made you realize this was a cult? So this is like deeply immoral behavior.
So
It's not patriotic either.
So after January the 6th, I came here and I kept mumbling, I feel like I just got out of a cult.
What makes Keith a frustrating interview is that though he calls it a cult, he still believes much of the cult's propaganda and he still excuses its actions. Because our crew is in the middle of the violence, it's hard not to want Keith to say it was wrong and he's sorry, which isn't really fair because no one with any power has said they're sorry.
It was a lot of self-analysis to get over the trauma of January 6th itself and the things that I saw on both sides.
Yeah, I don't understand how you cannot pick sides after what happened. Like, this seems like a really clear side.
The things that I saw were bad, regardless of which side you're on, is what I'm saying. There's nothing illegal about watching a fight that's happening. That's not illegal.
Well, when you're part of a mob that's storming the Capitol.
I was saying,
setting aside illegal, moral.
But I wasn't doing anything wrong. Like
You were part of the crowd. Your very presence was giving them support.
You were part of the crowd as well.
I was a journalist. They were screaming in my face.
I'm just a citizen, just standing there yelling. But like, I feel like we're getting sidetracked.
I mean, I think actually this is really at the heart of the question. This is the problem of a mob. It absolves people of their moral culpability. You're like, I was just one person.
Oh, well, I want to be clear. The people that actually, had physical confrontations with police officers, they should be held accountable for that.
Do you think the leaders who made these promises that they couldn't keep, that there would be evidence that would change the results of the election, do you think they bear responsibility for the mob that stormed the Capitol?
No, I don't. They created a grassroots movement that was Stop the Steal. I realized that I had been addicted to politics. I had created this reverence for the leaders of Stop the Steal. I felt like I was, which is more than ironic looking back, helping prevent a second civil war. And this is just...
He's writing a book that he says will help people who got addicted to Trump the way he did. So we followed him around a Trump rally to see if he could get through.
How you doing, Patriot? Good. I know you don't remember me. I saw you several times last year. Right now, it's like a drug because I'm going to get one of these patriotic t-shirts.
Keith was nervous that he'd get yelled at and rejected by the people who were once his allies. And that is what happened.
I was at the Capitol on January the 6th, and my book is about all the stuff that I saw at all the Stop the Steal rallies, and then how not yet. I get that a lot
because it's true.
CNN?
Yeah.
No, I have nothing. I mean, that is the definition of fake news. I don't care about your book, and I would prefer you to go. Like,
How'd that go?
Wow.
Are they in the cult?
So first of all, just their demeanor.
Yes.
And the way that by my flag and by CNN, how they were just completely triggered. I guess I feel like I'm going to take incoming fire from both sides as the marketing continues.
Have you just switched from the cult to being a grifter?
I'm losing money by doing this. Honestly, I could have a great business career doing something else. I don't have this big political message that I'm trying to promote. I'm not out here trying to make a bunch of money. I mean, if I make money, that's cool. I've taken a year of my life writing.
But if you're not here to make a political point, what's the point at all?
My point is I'm doing this to look out for people. I met people on my Stop the Steal journey that lost their job because they were going to go to the rally no matter what. People that were estranged from their family, whether it's politics or something else, don't get so caught up that you're not making your own decisions anymore.
I'm just going to go ahead and call this that. Yes, it was a little bit of a long video. I apologize, but I just wanted to show the whole thing in its entirety. Why? Just because, number one, it is amazing to me how he realizes that, the whole thing was a cult, yet he doesn't want to he doesn't want to hold accountable for his own actions. Even when the journalist sat there and said, but you were there too. Yeah, but you were there. And the journalist was like, yeah, I was doing my job. I was getting yelled at. Well, I was just a citizen in the crowd. No, you were in on it. And that's the one thing about folks that follow politics, and I keep on saying this all the time. There are folks that follow politics and are completely honest with themselves. And then you have everybody else. Like, for example, it's the whole thing I always say before about Trump people, accountability. Where is it? Trump has no accountability. At the same time, his followers have no accountability because they follow everything that Trump says. And so it's amazing that this former person, if you will, decided to sit there and say, oh, well, it's just that, the whole thing was a cult, as you're writing a book about the cult, the election cult, and trying to sell it. However, I find more interesting is that he was rejected by his, I always said it best. The whole thing's like a pack mentality. You go against the pack turns on you. And he found that out by going back to the very same people that he was just with at the January 6th event. They turned around and said, oh, well, you're probably a Fed. Or you're with CNN now. That's fake news. I don't want to talk to you. And of course, the journalist was sitting there saying, so did we learn anything? He goes, yeah, I mean, it's going to be a rough road. I'm like, accountability, dude. At the same time, it's like when she was talking to him, it's like, well, you have to accept some responsibility. He goes, I think you're trying to paint me into a narrative that I don't agree with. No, that is you avoiding accountability. Like I said before, if you chose to go to the rally, if you chose to go to the Capitol, if you chose to be in that crowd, whether or not you entered the Capitol, whether or not you destroyed property or took things that didn't belong to you, if you were there, you are accountable. If you're in that crowd, you're accountable. Just because you didn't attack the police, just because you didn't break windows, just because you didn't try to challenge Capitol Police there, doesn't absolve you. You are still an accomplice, which is the one thing I wanted to point out so much about this person, like the sheer hypocrisy that he has and trying to say, well, I'm just trying to fight for those that don't understand, even though he is literally like I said before, it goes back to facts and numbers. Like there are some facts when they're verified, they're irrefutable. Facts that are verified are irrefutable, whether you agree with them or not. He didn't agree with the fact that the voting in his county, because apparently he knows everybody, decides that, well, there's the minorities there are too poor to early vote. How do you know that? Are you at every polling place in your county? Were you able to look at all the ballots that were put in? And again, where did he get this from? He got it from Trump, because Trump was against early voting. He was against mail-in voting, even though he himself did mail-in voting. the point of the matter is just that when you look in the minds of these former so-called Trump people that still hold on these idealistics, keep in mind, as I say, as it goes toward the midterms, folks like that are still out there. And don't think for 1 second they won't vote for Trump if Trump is still available in 2024. But trust and believe they'll be voting for his candidates who are going to be kissing the ring, which is another story I'll have later. But anyway, switching gears for a second, I did want to cover, I know we don't usually cover a lot of things outside the U.S., but I thought this was interesting just because the issue that's going on with Canada right now, the highway that leads from the U.S. to Canada is currently being blocked by truckers over vaccine mandates. Yes, I know, over vaccines. We are literally streaming along in 2022, and folks are still worried about getting vaccines. You've heard me say it many times on the show. I myself have been vaccinated, and as you can see, I'm perfectly fine. But again, it's interesting now in Canada where there is a truck blockade going on about vaccine mandates. And of course, I just want to show a disparity in this. This is Fox News's coverage of the actual blockade and how I easily see why. I mean, for a station that calls themselves Fox News, it really isn't Fox News because Fox News is not a news station. It's been already said before in court, but it's amazing how they covered it. Watch.
Is with us now. Daniel, how much support is coming from the U.S. to these protests?
I don't want to make it sound like these protests are a foreign operation. Canada has a far right of its own. Canada has other citizens unhappy with COVID restrictions and with Prime Minister Trudeau more generally. Some of them are just calling for him to resign. So the U.S. didn't invent these protests. But with that said, it is just remarkable as a Canadian myself to see just how much attention this Canada story is getting from right-wing U.S. media. I personally spent 4 years as a U.S. correspondent for a Canadian newspaper. I can tell you almost nothing that happened in Canada ever made right-wing news like Fox in this country. These protests have been a nightly fixture on Fox News. Some hosts seem to be trying hard to make similar protests happen in the U.S., and they become a hot topic for Republican politicians as well. Watch this.
The Canadian truckers are heroes. They are patriots, and they are marching for your freedom and for my freedom.
We want those great Canadian truckers to know that we are with them all the way.
The question is, how long before protests like this come here? Will we need our own trucker rally to end all of this insanity once and for all?
So we don't have hard figures on U.S. donations to these protests, but there is no doubt that all this U.S. attention and, frankly, as you saw, Fox advocacy has helped the organizers generate millions in online donations. Fox host Tucker Carlson has even himself been selling T-shirts in support of the protests. Now, as a Canadian, I can tell you this right-wing coverage has tended to leave out some important facts, even when it hasn't been straying into outright falsehoods. Number one, this protest involves a tiny minority of Canada's truckers. As you said, more than 85% of the Canadian truckers who regularly cross the U.S. border are fully vaccinated, similar to the percentage for Canada's adults as a whole. Convoy organizers claimed in January that about 50,000 trucks were involved. It was actually in the hundreds of actual trucks, maybe into the low thousands, depending on what vehicles you count. But other participants are far-right activists or just citizens unhappy with Trudeau or COVID restrictions. Now, Fox is also depicting these protests as a kind of revolution, a popular uprising. Look, Canadian polling has consistently shown that a majority, sometimes around 2/3 of respondents in Canada, disapprove or oppose of the protests. And as Matt Egan said, they're now impacting important economic activity, impeding the operation of auto plants, for example. I would not be surprised if that opposition number increased further.
So again, as you can see, guys, facts in themselves, where you literally and figuratively see that something on a small scale, when it's shown in the proper light, can be exploded and exploited. Because as Fox News loves to do, especially with the three douchebags of the apocalypse, usually between Laura Ingraham, Tucker Carlson, and Sean Hannity, which I'm surprised we haven't heard a lot from him lately. There's always going to be this whole thing of revolution. You know, they're patriots. Of course, Ted Cruz thinks everybody's patriots. He thinks everybody's a Republican and goes against the current standard. You know, it's always interesting where, you know, you hear politicians and conservatives say, well, going against the government, and that makes you quite the patriot, but you work for the government. It's just words like that. They love buzzwords like that get people's attention. But yes, as we see, facts and importance, like 89% of Canadians are already fully vaccinated. So this is a small number of folks who have an issue with the vaccines. And I always find it interesting. Why do you have an issue with the vaccines? I usually have, my thing is, I like to have open conversation with those who are not vaccinated because I want to know your mindset. I mean, I've had people come up to me and be like, well, what's the issue with the vaccines? I'm not sure about getting it. I'll usually tell them. I won't sit there and don't get me wrong, I won't sit there and beat them down and say, what's wrong with you? You should have got it already, just because we've seen what happens to those who catch COVID but don't have the vaccine. Your chance of survival is very low. And again, I remember in multiple conversations I've explained this. I'm like, vaccines are required. I hate to break it to you, but in almost every aspect of our history, vaccines were needed. We needed them for polio, smallpox, measles, mumps. Even when the chickenpox was dangerous, the chickenpox now is being regarded as a nuisance. But in its heyday, it was up there, right up there with COVID in its heyday. However, chickenpox now can be easily avoided because we get booster shots when we're infants. So what does that all mean? Well, as I would explain to those individuals, and I explain to other individuals, that there's nothing wrong with the vaccines. But people say, well, I shouldn't feel like I should have to get the vaccines against my rights. Trust me, if we were in China or any other place that had a totalitarian government, you would have been long forced to get vaccinated. However, in this country of ours, if you choose not to get vaccinated, nobody's going to come breaking down your door with a needle saying you're going to get this today. But I've also said that your life will be more difficult for you as far as things that you're accustomed to. It is going to be more difficult for you to get these things or to go out or to do many of the things that people like doing for leisure, for business, and things of that nature, just because businesses and the rest of the world is moving forward. And therefore, unless you're going to live off the land and do a little house on the prairie, yeah, it's going to be more difficult for you. And I try to explain that to people in a way to make them understand that the vaccines are completely safe, that getting a second shot is needed. Getting a booster is needed. Why? Because the variants of this COVID virus is intrinsically behavioral of virus. I mean, for all those that follow virology, it's like, yes, viruses evolve just like humans do. So to see so many variants out, to see multiple variants of this COVID, I keep on want to say pandemic, but to see so many variants come from the single virus, this alone tells us that we need to listen to the science. And that's why I tell people all the time, listen to those who are studying it, who have expertise in this, who have education in this, who have time in this. Because I try to explain this. I try to explain it this way. If your car is broken, you're going to go if your car is broken or check engine light comes on, you're going to a car mechanic. I mean, yes, you may try to diagnose it yourself. Yes, you may do like me, who's an amateur mechanic, go on YouTube or any other place and try to see if you can find the answer another way. Because why? Because honestly, nobody wants to. I mean, honestly, if we could avoid it, most folks don't like going to an auto shop and paying anywhere from $75 up to $150 for a diagnostic fee, because the mechanic will find out the issue faster than you will on a given day. But you do have to pay for the mechanic's time. You have to pay for the mechanic's time and the use of expertise and the use of his tools to go into your car and see what's going on. Yes, watching that money go out of your account, especially when everything's going up, when everything else is going up, but your paycheck sucks. But at the end of the day, you know exactly what's wrong with your car. And if you want to spend a little bit more money, it will get fixed. The same way I apply that same logic, I apply the same logic to the vaccine. I am not a doctor. I am not a medical professional. I am not a virologist. I have not studied the field of medicine, and I have not published any scientific journals ever. So by that alone disqualifies me from trying to say anything outside of what has already been verified and academically reported by various reputable sources like the National Health Institute, Doctors Without Borders, the World Health Organization, and of course the CDC. That is why when I explain people, I said, this is why if you look at the information that's been provided, that this is how we're going to beat it. But in his case, But in the case of those that just choose not to get it, yeah, get used to being a little house on the prairie, because there's just no other way I can say it. But speaking of things that are just crazy and unfortunately involves my state of Tennessee, I wanted to talk about this story where apparently Pastor Greg Locke, if you don't know who he is, unfortunately he's very known in Tennessee, has a very controversial church in Mount Juliet, and decided this week that he's going to hold a bonfire of burning books like Harry Potter and Twilight, because he says, and I quote, that they are witchcraft. It's witchcraft 100%. And I wish I could make that up. That again, you would think, because his church, Global Vision Bible Church, which I did not know this, holds a book burning every Wednesday night, a book burning event every Wednesday night. And they burn evil books, as they call it, evil garbage, quote unquote, like young adult fantasy books, tarot cards, voodoo dolls, and crystals, saying it's witchcraft 100%. Now, also to make it funny, as it's been reported, at least one counter protester threw a Bible in the flames. So I thought that was funny. But again, this is the part where I sit there and say, you first off, Tennessee progressively backwards. But this is why I always find it interesting when folks go, well, I mean, it is witchcraft. It's this. I'm like, we represent multiple religions in this country. There are Wiccans out there, and there's nothing wrong with being a Wiccan. If you are a Wiccan, cool. If that's what you choose to live your life by, just like voodoo, I said I don't knock that religion. There are people that do practice it out there, and they are free to live their lives as well. It doesn't combat me. It doesn't hurt me. It's like a lot of things, like how people choose to live their lives will not affect my sleep at night. It's their choice to live their life and as they should do without judgment. But it is amazing to me that you have these pastors that want to sit there and take such political stances that I want to look at their tax exempt forms and go, you're not paying taxes? Like George Carlin once said, if churches want to give their opinion, they should pay the price of admission just like everybody else. So yes, if you're wondering, yes, tax the churches. No problem with that. But again, it's Pastor Greg Locke. That's the same person that was against the vaccine. The same person that said if he found people that were wearing a mask in his church, he would throw them out. This is the same person that literally was against the mandate. Excuse me. But yeah, it's crazy. People from the pulpit would sit there and give such crazy asinine ways, and people eat that mess up. Crazy, right? Also, what is crazy, y'all guys? A news story has came out again with the Ahmaud Arbery case. Like I said before, he's not the first. I'm pretty sure there are other cases out there like Ahmaud Arbery. We know, just like Emmett Till, where the mob that took that young man's life will never answer for it. But we do know that the three white men that killed Ahmaud Arbery will face life in prison for it. But now a news story is coming out of Mississippi, where again it's dangerous. Not only being a black person, but being a black person who's a delivery driver on the job, as this young man unfortunately found out.
A white father and son have both been arrested, charged, and let out on bail after allegedly shooting at an African-American FedEx driver. Brandon Case is charged with attempting to cause bodily injury with a firearm, and his father, Gregory Case, is charged with conspiring with Brandon to commit aggravated assault. DeMontario Gibson says he was trying to find an address while delivering packages for his job at FedEx when he says he was chased and shot at by the Cases, the bullets hitting his work van. DeMontario Gibson is joining us now to tell us what happened. He is here with his attorney, Carlos Moore, as well. DeMontario, thank you so much. This sounds terrifying. Can you tell us what happened?
Okay, so basically on the evening of January 24th, I was attempting to deliver a package to 417 Junior Trail, and I accidentally put the wrong address in, so I couldn't find the house. I eventually found the right address and proceeded to deliver the package to it. Upon doing it, I was approached by a white vehicle, and that vehicle chased me, tried to cut me off, and I miraculously got out of there. I went down the street about 2 or 3 houses after I got away from the initial vehicle, and there was a guy standing in the middle of the road holding a gun and my vehicle telling me to stop, which I did not do. They essentially just chased me out the city, and I had to file a police report after that. Shots were fired into my van as well. Yes, ma'am. That's a quick summary of it.
Very quick and helpful. And so you were wearing your FedEx uniform when they saw you outside of your van, is that right?
Yes, ma'am. I was fully dressed in FedEx uniform.
And what do you think the cases were trying to do? Were they trying to kill you?
Honestly, in my humble opinion, I think they were, because after they fired the initial shots, they continued to chase me out of the city again. I say so. If you didn't succeed the first time, then I could just only imagine what they was going to do if they had caught me.
Did they say anything? What do you think their motivation was here?
I honestly have no idea. We had no type of interaction before they did what they did. No words were exchanged or anything like that.
Okay, and Carlos, can you tell us a little bit about DiMonterio's interaction then with police once he got them involved here?
Yes, he immediately called the police that evening after he got to the interstate and informed his boss. The police did not take it seriously, so his boss went down with him the next morning to the station to make an official report. She showed them the bullet casings, the actual vehicle with the bullets in it, and the packages with the bullets, and then they started to believe him. However, they still allowed the cases 8 days of freedom before they turned themselves in to the Brookhaven Police Department, spending less than a day in jail on a $75,000 and $150,000 bond. And so that's why the family has contacted me, because they wanted this to be taken seriously and for there to be real charges for the cases.
DiMonterio, when this was happening, and it's really just happened here recently, as you looked back on this after a little bit of time had passed, did you see similarities to the Ahmaud Arbery case?
Yes, man, I can definitely see the similarities. And that's why I feel it's my responsibility to speak up, because Ahmaud Arbery didn't survive to speak up for himself. So I want to take that upon myself to do that for me and him as well.
So they're out on bail and they were given time to turn themselves in. How do you feel about that?
Honestly, I kind of figured that was going to happen in the first place when I initially reported it, because like I said, the officers were not taking me serious at all. Even when I went to the police station, they weren't taking me serious. So I kind of figured that was going to happen.
If this was a Black father and son and you were a white FedEx driver, do you think this would be different?
Yes, man, without questioning. I would have been arrested probably that same night and not given bail at all.
How has FedEx responded? Have they been accommodating to you?
Not really. I am currently on unpaid leave. They gave me up to 2 weeks off, but it's unpaid. They have paid for therapy, and they haven't really supported me in making the case progress forward, or I guess that's how I can say it. They haven't contacted me at all, except for once since this whole incident went down. They said it was investigating. I haven't heard anything since though.
You're on unpaid leave?
Yes, ma'am, currently.
Okay, and if you go back to work, I mean, where would you be working?
They told me they was going to try to work that out. I honestly don't know.
All right, I've actually just lost signal, but I know that you answered my question. So I'm going to ask you another one because I believe that our viewers are able to hear you. I know, Carlos, that you have you've requested that the FBI be looking into this incident as a possible hate crime. Can you tell us about that? And can you tell us what you have heard from the FBI?
Yes, I did ask the FBI to officially open a hate crime investigation 2 evenings ago. I understand that on yesterday, they did go down to the Brookhaven Police Department and pick up the file. And so while they would not confirm or deny that they are investigating, we do believe that they have taken this case seriously. We've also informed the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, and they have flagged the case and they're considering opening an investigation as well. So Mr. Gibson is pleased that the federal government is taking this case much more seriously than the Brookhaven Police Department.
Okay, I can hear you again now, just so you are aware. But DiMonterio, I just want to go back to the situation that you're in right now. So you were shot at in the course of your work for FedEx. You are now on unpaid leave. I'm assuming you needed leave. Tell me a little bit about why you decided you needed leave. I think we all know, but just explain why you're taking some time off.
Yes, ma'am. So initially, as soon as we left the police station, I was put right back on that same route, the following day. I tried to go through my work. It became kind of overwhelming, and my anxiety started up. I almost had an anxiety attack, and I just felt like I couldn't handle it mentally. So I decided to seek therapy and just take a few days off, or as much time as I need off, rather.
I mean, look, it sounds incredibly traumatic what you have been through, what you're describing here, and we're going to continue to follow it. DeMonterio Gibson, thank you for being with us this morning.
So imagine, it never ceases to amaze me that, like I said, that I always point this out, that social media is going to have to be. Social media has become the only way that minorities get justice in almost anything. I mean, if it wasn't for that young woman recording George Floyd, it would have never got the attention that it did. If it wasn't for the video of Ahmaud Arbery's last moments on Earth, we would have probably never got the justice that it did. And there's a reason why there's a reason why minorities do turn to social media, because we see this. This right here is a prime example that you are delivering a route. And trust me, I did Amazon for a little while, so I know how that feels about delivering packages. You could have on the uniform, you could have on the security, you can have on the lime green security vest. You could have everything on you. You could have the truck that's literally labeled that says you are who you say you are, whether it's UPS, FedEx, Amazon, DHL, whoever. The fact that you have the vehicle out there and that you're simply just trying to drop off packages, that you get individuals that just believe that because you don't fit a certain profile, if you will, that they will shoot at you. And trust me, I said it all the time. Like, for me, when I was doing Amazon, they put us in the middle. There was a lot of in the middle of bum nowhere. I had to stop myself because I almost cussed. But they put us a lot in the middle of nowhere. And I mean nowhere like these rural country areas where you don't see concrete streets anymore. You see dirt roads. And you see houses that are half a mile away from their mailbox. And don't get me wrong, beautiful countryside, love the open spaces and all that stuff. But what comes with that, especially if you're a minority, is that a lot of these people are rural white people who will probably be shooting. They always say no trespassing, shooters will be shot on sight. Trust me, those signs exist. And especially if you're just delivering packages because part of your job, that you have to be more careful. I remember when I said before, when I used to do deliveries for Amazon, I remember we had one driver meeting where they sat there and told us, oh, and as a reminder, please do not carry on firearms when you go out to deliver packages. And this one black older gentleman who was standing right beside me raised his hand and he says, I got a question. He goes, our supervisor goes, yeah. He says, who's going to protect us when these folks want to shoot at us? And he looked at him like, well, you can use your best judgment. If you don't feel safe, put down there and say, don't feel safe dropping this off. He says, so you want me on top of these other packages that I got to deliver within 8 hours, that if I don't feel, and this is just his words, not mine, you want me to go to this Crackers, if this is a Crackers location, that you want me to put down in my tracker saying that I'm unable to deliver this because I don't feel safe, for you to come back and sit there and tell me to try again? Nah, bro. He goes, nah, man. I said, my 9 will be on me. If you don't like it, tell me now so I can quit and go find another job. I can't blame him. Because it's just like the case I reported last week where, again, on a no-knock warrant, there was a young man who was lawfully carrying. Police raided on a no-knock warrant, and because he had the gun in his hand, finger off the trigger, mind you, that cop decided to still shoot him. So we're not even safe in our own homes. But going back to this, imagine that you are a delivery driver for FedEx, that you're driving for your life back to the interstate while being shot at. The bullet holes and the casings, which again should tell you a dead giveaway that these people were shooting at him. The police did not take him seriously. His boss had to go down with him to the police station to get them to understand that yes, he was shot at. They have the bullets and they have the truck and the bullet casings to prove it. Even more so, that not only was this young man traumatized from being shot, that the very next day they put him back on the same route. I can't blame that man for having. I can't blame that young man for having anxiety. You just got shot at one day. You would think that FedEx would sit. You think that FedEx management would sit there and be like, you know what? You just take. You know what? We're gonna put you on paid leave. I am not gonna put you back out there because that's number one. That's a traumatic event. Anybody that's trying to turn around and go back to work after that. I'm not saying it's brave. But like you said, it was too much for him on the very same route. This is a day after he was shot at. Now, if you've never experienced being shot at, it's a traumatic experience. At the same time, you need time to process what's happened, to really come to grips with that event. And this young man was trying to go back on the same route because FedEx failed to sit there and say, well, you know what? We need to get you help. We need to get you help if you need it, but you need time. But you don't need to be on this route. And even more so, they're FedEx. You would think because the FedEx truck, you would be like, oh, well, certainly this corporation is going to step in, investigate, but also make sure this young man's taken care of. Nope. 2 weeks of unpaid leave because that's how much FedEx cares. So again, we'll follow that story as it goes along. But even more so, what the scary part was that the father's son, not only, I was like, did they? I mean, we don't know whether or not they confessed to it. I mean, they were allowed to turn themselves in, to get themselves arraigned, get bail, and hop right back out. And I know a lot of people are saying, well, that only happened, only in Mississippi. No, it's always in the South. It always seems to happen in the South, where whenever a minority is accosted, assaulted, shot at, or things of that nature, how quickly it's dismissed. So I cannot blame what they're doing right now to use social media to get the word out, because unfortunately, without social media, I don't see minorities getting a lot of justice when everybody is slow to do anything. Because if I was that lawyer, I would be suing. First and foremost, I'd be suing FedEx for the way they treated that young man. I would be suing the police department for not taking this more seriously. And at the same time, those lawsuits are on top of whatever happening, because I would love to see, I know the story is still going to be developing as it goes along, but I would love to see that father-son explanation. Because again, why else would you shoot a delivery driver that's simply doing his job? Why else? Because I'll be honest with you, white people themselves who deliver these packages don't have that problem. But black people that go out to these rural areas where there's not a lot of us out there, that goes through our minds every day. So I can't blame those. And also, if you are delivering for UPS or FedEx or any of the major logistical companies, and you're a minority, please be careful. Because I can tell you from firsthand experience, it was not for me when I realized that unless I started carrying when I'm doing these packages, that was the only way I'm going to feel safe. Just being honest. But moving right along, guys, like I said, it's midterm election season. Midterm election season is upon us, and the turncoats are already showing. Even more so that woke Don Lemon actually called out one of them who was against Trump, but now has joined the Trump train.
All back to the man at Mar-a-Lago, even though the day after the attack on the Capitol, she told CNN, quote, his entire legacy was wiped out yesterday. She said that he should be held accountable for his actions. She said that she was speaking out strongly against the then president.
I want to be a new voice for the Republican Party, and that's one of the reasons I've spoken out so strongly against the president, against these QAnon conspiracy theorists that led us in a constitutional crisis. It's just wrong, and we got to put a stop to it.
We need that little thing like the tape going forward. Fast forward to today. In the wake of the former president's endorsement of her primary opponent, Nancy Mace stood up outside of Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue in New York City. Remember when he said that he could shoot someone in the middle of Fifth Avenue and not lose any voters? She stood up and said this.
I'm in front of Trump Tower today, and I remember in 2015 when President Trump announced his run. I was one of his earliest supporters. I actually worked for the campaign in 2016. I worked in 7 different states across the country to help get him elected.
Somebody give her a glass of water.
And that's the truth. I mean, why are we surprised? You woke Don Lemon, someone get her a glass of water. Because here's the thing. You don't think for one second that these people are really trying not to solidify their positions, especially among, I mean, like I said before in this election, and I'll say it once, I'm going to say it again. Democrats are going to have a harder time trying to get voters to convince them to keep their simple majority than it will be for Republicans to convince idiots to vote for them who have amnesia. They will have a harder time. Democrats don't have a lot. I keep on saying this every podcast. Democrats do not have a lot of wins in the column. Their promises that they made to get this simple majority have not panned out. They wanted to increase the minimum wage, did not pan out. They wanted to do their Build Back Better plan, which again, because of Manchin and Sinema, hasn't worked out. They talked about student loans, which again, for a majority of that promise, those that were on the PSL self-disabled and those that were under these for-profit colleges, those debts got wiped out. But for the remainder of everybody else, there is no relief coming as payments will resume very soon. Again, that's it's a promise that's not kept. And also on top of that, the only things that did get passed was a COVID relief anti-hate bill for for Chinese and Asian Americans, and on top of that, just recently an infrastructure bill that again was lied to because the Senate wanted the infrastructure bill pushed through, while the Build Back Better plan that the one that the House wanted never saw fruition. And let me not forget that the American Voting Rights Act, the John Lewis Act, and of course the George Floyd Police Reform Act, all dead. Democrats do not have a lot of wins in the win column on this. So it's going to be very hard for them to go back and sit there and say, well, trust us. I mean, we didn't really fulfill almost 8 out of the 10 promises we kept, but give us another chance. While Republicans, who have shown nothing this entire congressional session, have pretty much said no to everything, and is now going out and selling their conservatives. You see what the Democrats have done when they're in power? Nothing changes and everything increases, which a lot of Republican voters will forget that things were worse under Trump. The only people under Trump that actually succeeded were corporations and rich people. Everybody else to the wayside pretty much felt the brunt of it. And again, you have those who are senators or representatives who are literally placing the duck. There's going to be one story I got about Nancy Pelosi that's pretty much doing the same thing, trying to secure voters. But again, when it comes to Republicans, Trump is still very much the person to kiss the ring to make sure that you get his voters to vote for you. So I am not surprised about a woman who was against Trump at the beginning is now pro-Trump at the end. You know why? Because there's power in the Senate. There's power in the House. There's power when you're a politician, when you have influence, especially the higher up you go. And I've always said it best. There's no such thing as a broke politician. None whatsoever. So I am not surprised that now during election year will be the most active time you ever hear from any representative, Democrat or Republican or independent. But I'm not surprised that, she immediately jumped on the Trump train and is making sure that she is heard. Why? Because perception is everything. Moving right along, guys, today we'll close this next story again about an officer who was charged after a high-speed chase, decided to murder said driver and is now being charged for it.
Was it brother? I got videos where he actually battling and dancing with my 9-year-old daughter. You know what I'm saying? He's that guy. He was his son. If you asked him for his shirt today, and you didn't have it, he would give it to you. That's the type of man Robert was. And he was a father.
So I want y'all to remember the man my father was, the hard-working man he was, the funniest man you would ever meet. Man, I'll make you laugh till your stomach hurts.
Sled says 46-year-old Robert Langley was shot by Hemingway police officer Cassandra Dollard Sunday morning. Officials say this all started when Langley allegedly rolled through a stop sign. According to Sled, Officer Dollard was arrested and charged with voluntary manslaughter Wednesday. 15th Circuit Solicitor Jimmy Richardson said these cases are not easy to work on.
You'd like to go the rest of your career and not work a case like this, but it happens, and I am extremely sorry for the family. And one thing that I told them is that whatever happens here, justice isn't nearly as good as what people think it's going to be. It's not going to bring your child back. It's not going to do any of that.
Robert's going to bring this community together and change the way that we police in this community.
Working for you, Kirsten Clark, ABC News.
So again, this was actually a story that again in South Carolina, where they said that the individual was allegedly ran through a red light and a high speed chase had followed. And of course, when after the person had crashed their car into the ditch, according to the officer that they were trying to get out on the passenger side, the officer fired because again, and I cannot make this up. How many times have you heard this echoed by cops when it comes to minorities? She, quote unquote, she fired her gun because she was in fear for her safety. Here's my thing. A high-speed chase to where the person had wrecked the vehicle, and at the same time they're exiting the vehicle, the first thing I would ask was, did you see a weapon? If you did not see a weapon, why are you going to fire? And again, this officer sat there and said, and quote unquote, stated that she did not identify a weapon in Langley's hands, nor was a weapon recovered at the scene. So again, no weapon, you did not see one, and you're only being charged in involuntary manslaughter. Yeah, see, that's the thing that I cannot get behind. Where you have, which again, I'm happy that they're being charged for manslaughter, but at this point, it's like, well, what gave you pause to use lethal force? Like, what gave you, in your mind, justification? Because in my mind, I'm like, okay, he allegedly ran a red light. You had to chase him. He crashed his car. He was trying to get out. At what point was he a threat when he got out the vehicle? If you did not see a weapon was recovered at the scene. Why else did you fire? This is the point I'm making. But they always sit there and say, in fear for their life. You're an officer that has a gun. You're an officer that has the ability to call backup. You're an officer that has non-lethal as well as lethal options in front of you. And yet, the first thing officers always go for is a gun. Tell me I'm wrong. That's all I can sit there and say about that. But assuming that, now the officer has been charged with involuntary manslaughter, a case will ensue. And of course, we'll follow that here. Now, switching gears again, because I've always said it best, everything is going up but your paycheck. Well, go ahead and tighten those belts a little bit more because corporate greed is on the rise.
Prices across the country soaring from groceries to cars. Our chief economics correspondent, Rebecca Jarvis, is here with that for us this morning. Good morning, Rebecca.
Good morning, Michael. And Americans are feeling this. The highest inflation we've seen in this country in nearly 40 years, with prices up 7.5% in the last 12 months.
This morning, inflation up. Since December 2020, the price of a pound of bacon rising more than $1. A dozen eggs up 21%. And a sirloin steak up a whopping $2 a pound. Goldman Sachs economists estimating those food prices could jump another 5 to 6% this year. But it's not just the grocery bill eating into family budgets. Nationwide, gas prices are up 50% from last year. Plus, the average price of a new car, a record-breaking $47,077, nearly $6,000 more than a year ago. With 82% of new vehicle purchases above the suggested retail price, according to Edmunds.com, some automakers now enacting policies to stop the markups. Like Ford, whose CEO issued this warning on an earnings call last week.
We don't like making our customers wait, and we're taking action to ensure that they don't pay unreasonable markups.
And GM, which said in a statement, "We want every customer to have a great experience. The majority of our dealers know this. However, we want everyone on the same page."
And it's not only impacting car prices and the cost of fuel, it's also impacting the cost of insurance on the car, with many car insurers charging upwards of 6 to 8% more this year than last. So even if you got a raise, it doesn't feel like it, guys.
No, it does not. Even though raises themselves need to be adjusted. But that's the point. It's like and I say this because I just posted this on my Facebook. I said, they're going to have to explain. They're going to have to explain that. Remember a long time ago, they sat there and said, if we raise employee wages, prices will increase. If we pay more for healthcare for our employees, prices will increase. If we switch suppliers or anything else of that nature, keep in mind, they said if we do anything as a corporation, prices will increase. Now, keep in mind, Wages have not gone up. Healthcare is still a mess. At the same time, and I say at the same time, that nothing else aside from those three things has changed. But yet prices have increased at the gas station, at the grocery store, and very soon in the next story I'm about to show, rent as well. And why? Why? Because pandemic is set in. You would think that, it has affected inventory, but not to a certain extent. It has affected people shopping, again, to a certain extent. But people still, for the necessities, people still got to eat. People still have to need bathroom amenities. People still need to have gas for their cars. And people still need cars to get around. But with all that being said, it's not the fact of the pandemic, because the pandemic is only showing the light on the BS that corporations say will make prices go up. The fact of the matter is, corporations make prices go up because these corporations, Ford, GM, Kroger's, Walmart, all are recording record profits. They're recording profits in a pandemic environment. Now, you would think during a pandemic where everything slows down, corporations are making profits. But at the same time as they're making profits, they're increasing. Hell, even the place where I live right now, even the apartments, every time my lease is up, well, in order to continue the wonderful service that you're receiving, we have to increase the rates on your amenities. But I'm getting the same thing that I was getting the last 13 months because corporations increase profit and then blame other stuff, even though it's just corporate greed. It's not inflation. Inflation hasn't occurred. It feels like inflation, but it's corporate greed. Corporate is saying corporate is pretty much abusing capitalism to the point to where it's almost criminal. But at the same time, they'll sit there and blame everything else. Even more so, like check the story on rent. Like I said, everything is going up. Everything's going up at your paycheck. Rent too.
In cities across the country, including Austin, Texas, where Shadow Lemaire lives.
Over the course of the last 18 months, they have increased the rent by 40%.
Cities like New York, Miami, and Newark are seeing more than a 30% hike in rents, forcing millions to consider relocating.
That's a $600 increase a month. That's crazy.
And looking ahead, rent rates are expected to increase another 10% this year, according to a recent report from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York.
Over the last 7 years, the rent has generally increased about 6%, and we usually fight with them on a regular basis to get it lower than that, because when I was working, my annual increase wasn't even close to 6%.
Shadow Lemaire used to work as an accountant. She now collects $900 a month in disability benefits. She and her wife rent a 2-bedroom apartment in Austin for $1,500 a month. That amount is set to increase 43% to about $2,200 a month, outpricing the tenants of 7 years.
Our rent is based on supply and demand. And that's always the answer when we talk to them. It's being forced, and we're not prepared. We're not prepared to move right now. It's just a shame that they don't do anything to work with people that have been here so long.
A tough reality as workers return to cities and many local eviction moratoriums and rent freezes expire.
During the pandemic, people really went out and bought a lot of homes. They left the cities, moved to the suburbs and rural areas, and we saw home prices shoot up. More recently, people have been returning to cities, so home prices are up pretty much across the board. Low mortgage rates contributed to that. And now with the return to cities and also the end of the eviction moratorium, there has been a lot of demand for rents.
A high demand far outnumbering the supply of affordable homes.
Millennials are entering into homeownership age, they're starting families, they're getting married, they're going out on their own and wanting either an apartment or a home, and they're finding out there just aren't enough out there for everybody who wants one.
Economists say the rent issue can have ripple effects across the broader economy, and that the government can introduce policy changes to bring some relief.
In the short term, the government can look into providing rent relief so that it's more affordable and people can afford both their rent and things like groceries and gas and all of that in the short run. But the long run problem is really the supply of housing.
With no other choice, Shadow and her wife plan to hit the road in search of an affordable home.
We'll check out some areas, and obviously, we're looking at staying outside of the city so it's not as expensive. We are totally not prepared, but I'm sure that we'll work it out.
So I should note, a lot of these major cities did offer deals back in 2020 when a lot of people were leaving the cities and landlords were struggling to find renters, right? And this is an examination of the year-over-year increase. But an increase in rent broadly across the country is a huge issue right now. And part of that's because of the lack of new homes on the market and population growth. Take a look at this. The federal mortgage lender, Freddie Mac, found that the market only added 65,000 new homes back in 2020. And that compares to back in the late 70s, there were about 400,000 new homes built a year. And during that same time period, the population increased about 100 million people. And obviously, it's not one person living in every household, but you kind of get a picture and perspective how different the market looks like than it did in the past.
So again, this is why I sit there and say, guys, everything's going up at your paycheck. At the same time, rent itself is crazy. As I said before, I myself for the current part for now is still a tenant. But yes, that the fact that rent is going up, especially in places like Houston, Nashville's no different. Nashville is an it city apparently. We have almost close to at least anywhere from 2,000 to 5,000 people moving to Nashville every month. So right now, Nashville is teeming with people, and as land is being purchased, more apartments and condominiums are being built, and they're being charged New York rates. Whereas if you are a person that's just trying to find a decent place to live and not winding up paying more than 90% of your income to stay there, it becomes challenging. But again, is anything being done? No. Because again, these land developers, especially from upstate, are coming down south to purchase these areas, and they are building up at astonishing rates. That's why I always tell people, look, if you have land in your family, never sell it. If you have homes in your family, never sell them. Pass them down. Just because there is no point whatsoever about selling. Because this is what's happening with those homes that have 10, 20, 30, 40 acres, farmland, all that stuff. Those are being bought out, and those are being grilled up. Those are being dug up. Those are being together, like those very stand up. I forgot what those homes are called, or they're side by side. You don't really have much of a backyard. Supposedly, they look like apartments. They're called apartment homes. Figure that one out. But those homes are just packed together like sardine cans, condominiums that are stacked up at least 12 or 15 stories high or even higher. That's the world we're living in right now. And it's scary because if you're not making enough, which is why people are saying, I said, almost the average American citizen is one paycheck away from being in poverty. And imagine that now. It used to be that your rent or mortgage was only 10% of your income. Used to be. Now it's closer to maybe 60 to 70% of your income. So folks have to take on additional jobs, side jobs, just to make enough just to be broke. Not to quote Chris Rock, but yeah, how much do you make just enough to be broke? But this is the problem that this can be solved by our city governments. This can be solved by our state governments. It can even be solved on the federal level, because there has to be somewhere along the lines, there has to be someone that's looking at all this and going, then he put stops to it. Corporations say this all the time, especially when it comes back to automakers. GM, General Motors, Ford, all the big automakers, especially the ones that went to Congress to get bailed out, by the way, not too long ago, will sit there and say, well, we're going to work with our dealers. But dealer markups are crazy. The price of a used car now is literally the price of a new Ford, of a low economy Ford vehicle. Think about that. A used vehicle now, at one point, never went higher than $20,000, is now somewhere between $28,000 and $35,000 for a used vehicle. New vehicles are approaching new vehicles are approaching closer to $60,000 and up. Again, whereas I want to know, for them raising this cost this money, where is the people that have that money? Because unless you are working 2 or 3 jobs, I sincerely doubt you have it. But again, this is why I say there's no such thing as a corporate. At this point, they keep calling inflation. It's not inflation. It's corporate greed is what it is. And you can see it now on a wide scale. But the last one I got, guys, like I said, I was going to talk about Pelosi. Now, again, I said it's because it's elections. It's election season, midterm election season. When we're about 7 months away from it. That again, Pelosi has sat there and said now that she is open to banning congressional stock trading. Now, keep in mind, for all those that don't know, Bernie Sanders and a handful of other representatives from the House, more progressives, has sat there and said there needs to be a wall between Congress and Wall Street, mainly because of stocks. Because let's be honest, if you're a politician that has access to Wall Street and to stock information, you tend to come up a little bit better. Literally, it's legal. To me, it's legalized insider trading. But anyway, there were those that Pelosi was against it for the longest time. And you would think a politician that was against having regulations put between them and Wall Street. So after months of resistance, Pelosi has agreed to banning congressional stock trading, which I find amazing. That again, this is the whole point, that the effort will restore public trust in Congress, which again, I kept saying this the entire time, that they're not, granted, this is a story of too little too late to me. This is a story of too little too late, that you would think when you had the Biden win, when you had the slim majority in Congress, when you had all this going, this should have been hammered out like within the first couple of weeks. Congress is not a hard system. Chuck Schumer at any time could have brought this to the Senate floor. Nancy Pelosi could at any time brought this to the House floor, but she didn't want to. Why? She was benefiting from it. Simple and plain. When you're a politician, you have access to more things than the average American, including stocks. And I've always said it best. If you're going into a public office where you have access to like this, that you yourself cannot control stocks, you yourself cannot go to a broker and say, hey, buy this, sell this, trade this, or anything of that nature. At one point, like Bernie Sanders says, it needs to be put in a blind trust to be handled by a third party to which you will have no knowledge of or access to until you leave office. It was a brilliant idea. And yet so many politicians were mum on it. I wonder why. But now Pelosi's going to sit there and say, quote unquote, when we get caught up and even have the ability to individually trade stocks, it erodes public trust in government. And right now, whether it's media, government, or any sort of institution, we're having a crisis of public faith in many institutions that are very critical to the well-being of society. That was by AOC. And again, AOC said that. And Pelosi, above all people, has sat there and said it has to be government-wide. I said, that's no problem. But you were against it. Now, if I was a reporter and I'm sitting there listening to this call, I'm sitting there saying, Representative Pelosi, House Speaker Pelosi, may I ask, why were you against this for so many months? Because if anybody's paying attention, it would be like you benefited from it. Even more so, as she, quote unquote, we are a free market economy. I think that the speaker's openness on the position is really a statement to the fact that, oh, well, that's AOC, I'm sorry. So to quote again, Pelosi, we are a free market company. A free market economy. That's not saying a lot. That's like saying burgers are great. That's not saying a lot. Again, Pelosi, the reason why, and I always say this best, that she benefited from it. Even though all members of Congress don't support it, there's another Democrat that actually pushed back, Lane Lura, a Democrat out of Virginia, sat there and said, why would you assume that members of Congress are going to be inherently bad or corrupt? Because absolute power corrupts absolutely. I would think that if I have access, like I think if I'm a politician, I have access to Wall Street. You don't think that one individual is going to sit there and be like, I know where to put my stocks. I know what to buy. I know what to sell. I know what to get rid of. You don't think for 1 second people in Wall Street did that. It's insider trading. It's illegal and therefore should be punished as standard law by the SEC. No problem. Politicians should not be given a green pass for it. So I always sit there and say, why would you to answer Miss Representative Elaine Lua out of Virginia, why do you assume that members of Congress are going to be inherently bad or corrupt? Previous history. But I just find it interesting that Pelosi out of nowhere is now open to it. And she's only open to it, guys, because, again, it's election year. People are trying to keep their positions. And I've said before, Pelosi needs to go. And from a Democratic standpoint, Pelosi needs to go. I wish the Democrats would go more progressive and less moderate, because moderate Democrats are nothing more than Republican light. They really are. And that's what moderate Democrats, as far as Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin are, also need to go. Because if you're going to be Republicans, you might as well join the other side. But we will follow that story because, like I said, I have very little faith that all of Congress is going to go with it, because I said also before that there needs to be term limits being served in Congress, especially in the House and the Senate, that it should be treated just like the presidency. It should be treated like the presidency. I still believe that, if you serve 2 consecutive terms, that should be it. Then you sit out one congressional session, and if you want to, you can come back. But I would say putting term limits on who can serve in this term, putting term limits on those that serve in the Senate and those that serve in the House will serve us greatly, because now these folks realize we're putting you on a timetable. Because remember, you work for us. We pay your salary, and we need to make sure that you're working for us and not benefiting yourself. And that goes for everybody, whether Democrat or Republican. But moving along, guys, we're going to go to our feel good segment, because usually how the fact we got here, we usually cover a lot of things that are kind of terrible, kind of bad, makes you lose faith in humanity. But hey, it's the weekend. It's sunny where some of us are. If you're not upstate, you're probably still digging yourself in snow. Hope you guys are being safe. But hey, we want to give you 3 stories that kind of are uplifting, kind of positive, put a spring in your step and a song in your heart. And this one I did actually show during the midweek review, which again, I love learning things about history, especially Black history, because there's a lot of stories out there that we don't get to see thanks to people that believe in CRT being taught in schools, things of that nature. But that being said, this wonderful African-American women unit that served during World War II is finally going to get their flowers, and it is rightly deserved.
You know about World War II, those who fought against Hitler and his Axis alliance. Hey, we got a job. Let's get this done. But you've probably never heard of raising the morale of millions of servicemen overseas. It was just after D-Day in 1944. Allied troops were rapidly moving through Europe, and millions of pieces of undelivered mail for America's armed forces were piling up. We helped each other. We worked with each other. Retired Major Fanny Griffin McClendon of the Women's Army Corps, now 101 years old, was a supervisor in the 6888 Central Postal Directory Battalion, a group made up of all Black women and credited with clearing a 2-year backlog of letters and packages from family members back home to their loved ones fighting on the front lines.
They prevailed where others failed. They were not the first.
Retired Colonel Edna Cummings, an advocate for this largely unrecognized group, says the 6888, as they were called, comprised the only Black members of the Women's Army Corps to deploy to Europe during World War II.
The Army thought it would take 6 months to clear the backlog just in Birmingham, England, but they reduced the backlog in 3 months.
Then returning home from the war with no fanfare.
It never occurred to me that anybody would be standing outside of Fort Dix and waving and say, hey, they're home, or whatever.
They never got a parade. They never got a salute.
Brenda Partridge Brown says she never knew her mother, Willie Bell Irvin Partridge, was part of the battalion until a simple Google search nearly 20 years after her mother's death.
I can't explain to you what I felt that day. My heart almost stopped.
Only 6 of the original 855 were believed to still be alive, and now the battalion is close to getting the recognition many say is long overdue.
It's sad that my mom's not here and my husband's not here.
The Senate unanimously passing a bill for that unit to receive the Congressional Gold Medal, but it's awaiting action in the House.
It just means the world to me to know that my mother's service was not in vain.
It never occurred to me that we would even be considered for a medal of any kind.
Unsung and unlikely war heroes, now closer than ever to getting the recognition they deserve. Faith Abube.
Yeah, like I said before, I hope they actually do get it, because again, like I said, there's a lot of stories, especially not just in wartime, but also just with other Black people and what they have done. So I will definitely be following that story, because I really do want Congress to act to give these people, to give these remembered veterans the honors and flowers they deserve, really and truly. So next story, I forgot what this one story is. Let's just play it.
Welcome back. It is time for Feel Good Friday, where we bring you a little good news heading into the weekend. Today, it is all about the importance of being heard. Students at Tara High School in Baton Rouge are spending their free periods doing something different. So not listening to music or making TikToks, but they are listening to each other. Senior class president James Robinson started the Be Heard Club for students in every grade to meet and talk about issues they're going through. James is with us now, along with senior and club member Destiny Norris. Thank you both for being here. Welcome, welcome. So James, this is an amazing idea. I can't believe you got other teenagers to put down their phones, but where did the idea come from?
First, good morning, and I thank you for having us. The idea came from a lack of communication. I understood that everyone was going through problems, everyone was going through something at school, and they were trying to make it, they were trying to get through the struggle. Some people say senioritis, junioritis. And I felt that if we can't talk to teachers about it, or if we feel more comfortable talking to a peer, that we should have a group that stands for something. We should have a group of peers, all of the friends, even the ones that we don't know, get together. We can have meetings and express ourselves, share our ideas and our goals, and talk about things that go on in our life so that we can get assistance from others.
Destiny, what's been the nicest part about this experience for you?
Hanging together, changing the school community.
We know you're in a school. There's the proof.
Changing the school community is also nice to, see yourself participating in events and activities, instead of just sitting in the bleachers and being one of the people listening to the people in the middle of the floor that's hosting the event. But one of the people that's out there, communicating with the crowd, communicating with the students, asking them what they want, activities they want to see happen at their school.
And I'm assuming it's been really all the more important to connect after living through this pandemic. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
I'm sure. So James, you're a senior, you're class president. What is your hope for the Be Heard Club after you graduate, which is an amazing legacy?
Yes, of course. My hope for the club is just for it to live on. I want people to be like us, to feel like they need to change the community, that they feel like they need to be active in school, create any club of their choosing, be a part, be members of everything that's going on, and be actively changing their surroundings. I want it to live on, transfer to more schools, get more people involved. I want the middleman or the man that's in the back that's sitting quietly or don't have anything to do in school to get active, make some programs or have a fair or have a field day, do some things like that. Yeah.
Just connect more with the other people around that person, which is so important because, as people say, the more we're in theory connected by devices, the less we feel sort of that human connection. So Destiny, as far as what you share, what you hear your peers sharing, is a lot more hardship and this is a place to really get support? Or is it more, oh, did you see this show? Did you see this movie? What have the conversation threads been like?
Well, we offer support. We offer support and
please report to the front office.
Sorry.
That's okay. They're in school. This is normal. You're saying you offer support maybe to people who are struggling with issues at home or in school?
Yeah, we offer support. Like we go around, asking people, anybody having any at-home problems, anything they need help with at school, anything like that. We don't wait till, see someone in trouble. We ask ahead of time, try to get in front of the problem. Because we do focus on the social and emotional aspects of everybody's lives. We want to make people feel comfortable to come express yourself before anything gets out of hand or before you feel like you've been pushed to the side or zoned out. We want everyone to feel welcome. We want everyone to have a safe space that they can go to, because we go through the same things. And especially as a freshman and a sophomore, just coming into high school or even a transfer, you need someone to be there for you. You need someone to say, hey, what do I want to do after high school? I went through this. I had trouble with this, so I can help you. I can teach you. I can help you talk to your teacher if you're going through something.
So even at home, we try to be very personal because at the end of the day, we are friends. And even if you just come into the school, you're welcomed in as a friend and family even, because we share all of these things.
And it's not even with negative problems. Like us as seniors and last year during the COVID-19 year, as juniors, we had trouble figuring out what we wanted to do after high school, what career path we wanted to, go down. And we know a lot of students here like really have trouble with figuring out what they want to do after high school, following the right path, what career they want to follow.
Well, your club members are lucky. It's amazing. You guys created something really good. James Robinson, Destiny Norris, thank you both for.
And I thought that was cool too. I apologize. I completely forgot what that was about. My mind went brain dead for a second. But no, that was actually students that were actually just creating a space to where students can be heard as far as getting help, assistance, college preparation, things of that nature. And I like the fact that not only is it just the assistance is there, but students are taking the initiative to help other students. And I thought that was pretty cool. You can definitely tell their students because you definitely heard a lot of stuff being over the PA side of things. But I like the fact that they actually have that. And again, I love the fact of just seeing where there's a club place for students to go to and be heard by their fellow peers, because that's what's happening. That's great when we can uplift and actually help each other, or at least help each other get the help that they need. And I thought that was pretty cool. The last video I got, guys, before we wrap this up, again, it's definitely it's always one of those things you said when you were a kid that, if you became famous or you won the lottery, you would do things for your family, like, buy your mom a house, give your dad a car, stuff like that. Well, this individual may have been able to fulfill a promise that she made to her grandmother.
Hear a granddaughter's promise when she was just 8, now 31, what she's done for her grandmother. Tonight in Portland, Oregon, a promise kept from a granddaughter to her grandmother. It's America Strong. At just 8 years old, Janita told her grandmother, Irma, she'd buy her a house one day, one big enough to fit her 22 grandchildren. Janita saving up money little by little ever since, and reminding her grandmother, who they call Momo, about that promise often.
I want to buy you a house.
Every year she'd keep telling her, I'm going to do it.
Let's practice. Momo, this is your brand new house.
Momo pretending what she would do if it ever happened. Tonight, all these years later, Janita and Momo, and that moment, walking up the driveway.
She said, why couldn't she bring the gift to the house? Well,
Janita tells her.
You want to know why? Because it's your house.
Her grandmother, stunned. Walking through that front door, the whole family there. Momo overcome.
One day, Mama, I'm going to be good. And she did. She did, Mama. Yeah, she got you out, Mama.
And right here tonight,
Hi, baby.
Janita telling us why she did it.
I wanted to just make sure she lived comfortable and got her the home because she deserves it. I was happy. So happy I had to cry.
That new home now ready for Momo and all of her grandchildren. What a gift.
Ooh, that reminds me of my family. Oof, that's a lot of grandkids. But I just love the fact, like I said, it's cool to actually, when you're a kid or you're growing up, that you can fulfill promises like that. And nothing says promises like literally and figuratively buying your grandma a home. And I just thought that was just awesome as all get out. But when I saw them grandkids, just I'm sorry, my mind was like, family reunion time. But again, just thought that was pretty cool. But as we wrap this up, guys, I do want to thank everybody that watched, that liked, that hung on. I know our podcast ran a little bit long. I apologize for that. But before I do get out of here, I do some shameless plugging. Let me first talk about my buddy who'll be coming back very soon, Big BZA Dot, who will be resuming his podcast very soon. You can definitely find him, Avon Westwood, on Facebook, Big BZA Dot on socials, where he has a Smoking Trailer Sundays every Sunday from 6:30 to 9 p.m. And, of course, the REF podcast every Tuesday from 6:30 to 9 p.m. as well. Definitely check him out, as he will be definitely coming back with new shows. Avon Westwood on Von Stevan Witherspoon. I keep on forgetting his middle name was never said. Hey, what's going on Facebook or Big VZ on socials. Also, shout out to my buddies Ari and Geek Salad. Ari and Gee present Geek Salad for allowing me to share my podcast on their page. Really appreciate that. They actually did drop a new episode of Geek Salad. They usually try to drop one every Friday, but definitely check them out on Facebook as well as YouTube, as the page is showing right here. They are basically they do talk about everything pop culture, everything outside of it through an unfiltered but an intelligent conversation and dialogue with others as well. Can't wait to have them back on my other podcast very soon. But definitely check them out. Ari and Gee present Geek Salad on Facebook as well as YouTube, as you see right there. Now, as for me, guys, my IG handle is BlackFox447. You can follow me there on Instagram because I do post a lot of things of movie reviews, video game reviews, television reviews, and sometimes some gym stuff because I do a couple push-ups. At the same time, I like to post encouraging things because in 2022 I'm all about positivity, optimism, being positive and upbeat, and just encouraging others to be at their best as I'm trying to push myself to be at my best. So definitely follow me there. The actual ticker at the bottom, if you copy and paste that into your browser, will take you to my link tree that has the YouTube and Facebook groups for all of my podcasts. How the Frack Got Here, Get Bitten Off of Its podcast, to where you'll be able to see every podcast we've done so far and subscribe. Lets me know that you guys are watching. Aside from that, guys, like I said about the vaccine, please get vaccinated. Please get your shots. Please wear a mask. Please do everything you can right now because trust me, the Omicron variant, along with COVID and everything else right there, is real. The only way we can get these numbers down is to actually protect ourselves. Not only doing that, because there's still people in the hospital that's still going for life-saving treatments. I'm talking about those for kidney dialysis, blood transfusions, diabetic needs. They are and also transplant surgeries. These things are being pushed back because a COVID bed is taking up space. The more we can get those people out of those COVID beds, the more that these people can get in and get the life-saving treatment that they need. It's not always about the hospitals being open, but you have to understand the hospital serves more than just the ER point. It actually does help to maintain and save the lives of individuals. That's all I'm saying. But with that being said, guys, last thing to say about How the Frack We Got Here, it's all about being informed. We're not trying to change minds, persuade people. We're simply doing what the news stations of old try to do. Give you all the information possible to inform you while providing a logical perspective view of all that. Because we do a lot better in society once we're informed. We're progressive, at least we try to be. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past by making decisions now that should have been done back then, like electing our first Madam Vice President who was Black. The only thing about history is, as the lesson always goes, we are doomed to repeat it if we do not learn from it. That's how we always keep on getting people worse than Donald Trump. That's how we always find ourselves in a bind because we do not learn from history. At the same time, we'll always still be wondering if we're not moving forward, how the frack we got here. That being said, guys, thank you all for watching. If you're watching this on the podcast, watching this on the repeat, please let me know that, and also comment if it's loud. Please let me know. Please let me know if this is being repeated. If you're watching this on the repeat, please comment if it's live. I still want to know what you guys thought about everything we discussed. Aside from that, take care of yourselves and each other, and we will all get through this. Peace.